Sometimes the line between fiction and reality can get blurry. An actor who dies the same way his movie character did. A song about a fatal street race followed by the singer's own brush with death. A best-selling crime novelist tied to a real murder investigation. Today we're exploring some chilling stories of life imitating art. We're all familiar with the story of the Titanic. It's probably the most famous shipwreck in modern history and in our current pop culture. The so-called unsinkable ship had set sail on its maiden voyage on April 10, 1912, carrying over 2,200 people. Just 5 days later, in the freezing North Atlantic, it hit an iceberg and broke apart and sank, killing more than 1,500 passengers and crew. Most of the ship still remains on the ocean floor today, 12,000 feet below sea level, over 350 nautical miles off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. But did you know that 14 years before the Titanic disaster, in 1898, a novel titled Futility seemingly prophesied the disaster? Written by an American author named Morgan Robertson, the story wasn't anything of note at the time it was published. Robertson had worked on ships himself for over 20 years and regularly wrote sea stories for magazines and newspapers. But after the sinking of the Titanic, readers found some of the details in the novel disturbingly coincidental. The book described a massive luxury ocean liner, the largest ship of its time, named the Titan. It could travel fast and was considered to be unsinkable, until it hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic in April. It went down with thousands on board because there weren't enough lifeboats. Sound familiar? Robertson had written near-identical circumstances of the real Titanic disaster, down to the month, the speed, the iceberg, and the lack of lifeboats. Even the measurements of the fictional ship were similar. After the real Titanic tragedy, Futility was republished with the new title, The Wreck of the Titan, and remains one of the most bizarre and unsettling literary works.
I was just thinking, if the Titanic would have made a left or a right turn 5 seconds earlier, I wouldn't have a favorite movie.
Before we get to the next story, I'd like to thank this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access. I'm actually at the airport right now, about to head to Japan. While I'm there, I'm going to be working remotely out of cafes using public Wi-Fi. And you guys know, I'll also be rewatching my comfort show Peep Show during my downtime, which I stream on an Australia-only platform. So I'm going to be using a Private Internet Access VPN. The VPN creates a secure encrypted tunnel for your data and hides your IP address, keeping your online activity private. In short, it shields your digital life from anyone looking to exploit your personal information. That could be your internet provider, network admins, government censors, hackers, or anyone on the same Wi-Fi as you. Private Internet Access is the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. They have a strict no logs policy, which means they never record or store your data. And beyond privacy, there are some great entertainment perks too. Private Internet Access lets you change your virtual location and works with Netflix and all other major streaming services, so you can access TV and movie catalogs from other countries. Private Internet Access is available on all major platforms: Windows, macOS, Android, iOS, Linux, and one subscription covers an unlimited number of devices, so your entire family can be protected. Sign up by scanning the QR code or clicking my link in the description, piavpn.com/amglimpse. You'll get an 83% discount. That's just $2.03 a month. Plus you also get 4 extra months completely free. It's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and PIA's 24/7 customer support is always there if you need help. Now, back to the video. Delia Owens is best known today for her hugely popular 2018 debut novel, Where the Crawdads Sing, which has sold over 15 million copies and was adapted into a movie produced by Reese Witherspoon. The story follows Kaya Clark, a girl abandoned by her family in the North Carolina marshes in the 1950s. She grows up alone, but becomes deeply connected to the flora and fauna around her. She writes and illustrates nature books, and with the help of her love interest, gets them published. The novel's present-day timeline follows Kaya's murder trial after she's accused of killing the local star quarterback. The town is prejudiced against her, but eventually she's found not guilty. But, spoiler alert, it turns out she did kill him after he attacked her and tried to rape her. However, before Delia became a best-selling novelist, she and her husband Mark had been well known for their wildlife conservation work in Africa decades earlier. She'd already written 3 memoirs about their experiences, starting in the 1970s when they worked as lion researchers in Botswana. They were eventually kicked out of the country after clashing with the local cattle industry, which they believed was involved in poaching. In 1986, they relocated to Zambia's North Luangwa National Park, right in the middle of the poaching wars caused by the booming black market for ivory. By the late 80s, poaching in Africa was so rampant that some countries, like Kenya, instituted shoot-to-kill policies, allowing poachers to be shot on sight. Zambia didn't, and was overwhelmed by well-armed poachers. Local scouts were underpaid and undertrained, so Mark Owens decided to step in, training and arming about 60 scouts himself, offering bounties for capturing poachers, and raising money for uniforms, supplies, and medical care for the villagers. By the early 90s, the national park began to recover, but the poaching hadn't stopped entirely. In March 1996, ABC News aired a documentary called Deadly Game, the Mark and Delia Owens story, about the couple's anti-poaching efforts in Zambia. According to Jeffrey Goldberg's 2010 New Yorker article, Mark is seen throughout the doco carrying pistols, a hunting rifle, and an AR-15 automatic rifle, and orders his scouts, "If you see poachers in the national park with a firearm, you don't wait for them to shoot at you, you shoot at them first." But what is really disturbing about this particular episode was that it included footage of a man being shot to death.
On this mission, we would witness the ultimate price paid by a suspected poacher. Early in the morning, a scout discovers an abandoned campsite. Lying on the ground are shotgun shells. So the scout decides to wait in ambush. Our cameras begin rolling again after a shot is fired at the returning trespasser. The bodies of the poachers are often left where they fall for the animals to eat. Conservation, morality, Africa.
The audience is never told who the man was or whether he was even in fact a poacher. The identity of the shooter is never revealed either. In fact, there's hardly any context to the clip at all. We don't know when or where it happened, and no details were provided about what the lone man was doing at the camp before the cameras started rolling. We're never told if ABC followed up or investigated in the incident. The killing of the man is never mentioned again in the remaining 25 minutes of the show. The broadcast triggered outrage in Zambia. Authorities launched a homicide investigation, seized the Owens' conservation project, and accused ABC of showing an illegal execution without context or accountability. But the case stalled after the body was never recovered, and both the ABC crew and the Owens' left the country despite requests to return for questioning. The Owens' have staunchly denied involvement in the shooting. Mark claimed the rifle he carried on camera was fake and accused the ABC producers of pushing to stage a poaching encounter. However, ABC cameraman Chris Everson and producer Janice Tomlin said the killing was real and that the shooters were Mark's scouts. Chris Everson even alleged that Mark's 25-year-old son, Christopher Owens, fired the fatal shots off camera. A Zambian detective later claimed Mark helped dispose of the body by dumping it into a lagoon via helicopter, so it could be consumed by wild animals. To this day, Mark, Delia, and Christopher Owens are wanted for questioning in Zambia over the killing and other alleged crimes in North Luangwa. Delia maintains she had nothing to do with any of it, saying they had only ever wanted to scare poachers, not harm anyone. The case has been stalled for decades due to lack of extradition treaty with the US, as well as ABC's refusal to cooperate. Delia Owens isn't the only best-selling author whose life took a turn that strangely imitated her own fictional work. Decades earlier, Agatha Christie became the subject of a mystery as puzzling as the one she became famous for. Agatha Christie, the undisputed queen of crime, wrote 66 mystery novels, 14 plays, and has sold around 2 billion copies. She is the most translated individual author in history, and her works have been adapted for film and television across generations. She became famous for her intriguing and atmospheric murder mysteries that followed a similar formula. There was usually a murder early on in the story, an ensemble of suspicious characters, a clever detective like Poirot or Miss Marple, red herrings and misdirections galore, and a satisfying grand reveal at the end. But in 1926, Agatha Christie became the subject of a real-life mystery that could have easily been plucked straight out of her own books. It had been a year of major highs and lows for the 36-year-old author. Her sixth novel, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, had just been published and was an instant hit. Her writing career had taken off, so she and her husband Archie, a former military officer turned businessman, bought a 12-bedroom mansion in rural Berkshire, even after locals had warned them that the home was cursed. In April, Agatha's mother Clara died of bronchitis. Her husband Archie had been away on business and did not return for the funeral. Agatha then spent several months at her childhood home sorting through her mother's affairs. While she was away, Archie began a relationship with a woman 10 years younger than him named Nancy Neal, and he had not been discreet about it. When Agatha returned, Archie asked her for a divorce so he could marry his mistress. On the evening of the 3rd of December 1926, Agatha and her husband got into a particularly nasty fight because Archie was going to spend the weekend away with his mistress and her friends to celebrate their unofficial engagement. After he left, Agatha kissed her 7-year-old daughter Rosalind goodnight and left her with their maid. Then, she got into her car and drove off into the night. The next day, police found her abandoned car crashed in some bushes with the headlights still on. Her license and other belongings were on the front seat while her suitcase and coat were strewn across the back seat. Agatha herself was nowhere to be found. Her disappearance set off a nationwide police search. Newspapers ran wild with theories and dramatic headlines. Like any good Agatha Christie novel, the case was full of strange clues and red herrings. Her brother-in-law, Campbell Christie, told police he had received a letter from Agatha saying she was going to a Yorkshire spa for a few days. She had also written 2 other letters, one to her secretary and one to her husband. Archie burned his letter and refused to reveal to police its contents. He and his mistress, Nancy Neal, were considered prime suspects, but both had alibis. Police were unconvinced by the letters and believed the most important clue was the abandoned car. Fellow mystery writer Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, even brought in a clairvoyant, using one of Agatha's gloves to help track her down. The medium claimed she had been murdered and was lying at the bottom of a local lake called the Silent Pool. Police dragged the lake twice, but nothing was found. Thinking she might have died by suicide, they sent out bloodhounds and even her favorite terrier to search the nearby countryside, but still found no trace. Finally, after 11 days gone, Agatha was found nearly 300 kilometers away from her house. The story of the celebrity author's disappearance had become front-page news, and a staff member at a spa in Harrogate, Yorkshire, recognised that a lively, outgoing South African guest was actually the missing writer in disguise. Agatha had been there the whole time under the alias Tressa Neal, the same surname as her husband's mistress. She had been enjoying the spa treatments offered by the hotel, went shopping, played billiards, danced and socialised with the other guests. When Archie showed up at the hotel, she didn't seem to recognise him even though they had been married for nearly 12 years. She introduced him to other hotel guests as her brother. Then when she was shown a picture of her daughter Rosalind, she didn't recognise her. Agatha was taken home and eventually regained her memory, but did not speak of the incident until 2 years later in a rare interview with the Daily Mail. She admitted to the newspaper that she had been feeling suicidal the night she drove off, but then after the car crash, she truly believed she was a young woman from South Africa. She said she didn't remember how she got to the spa and didn't recognise her own face plastered in the newspapers. Most modern biographers and medical experts believe that Agatha was suffering from severe depression triggered by her mother's death, her husband's affair and impending divorce, and pressure to deliver another bestseller, which led to her having a breakdown and entering a dissociative fugue state. But other theories emerged as well. Some believe that Agatha had orchestrated the disappearance as a calculated move to expose her husband's philandering and publicly humiliate him. There's also the theory that Agatha pulled off maybe one of the world's greatest publicity stunts. After her disappearance hit the news, her book sales did double, and newspapers printed her serialized novels next to updates on the case. Then in 1930, Agatha Christie signed a lucrative 6-book contract, firmly securing her title as the Queen of Crime.
There was no fugue state. I remember everything.
Paul Walker started his career as a child actor and model, then shot to global fame in 2011 with the release of The Fast and the Furious. The movie was a box office hit and launched a massive media franchise. His character, Brian O'Connor, a cop who loved fast cars as much as the street races he was investigating, quickly became a fan favorite. The films became hugely popular for delivering high-octane action sequences and still have a very devoted fan base. By November 2013, Paul's latest movie, Fast and the Furious 6, had been a hit, and he was in the middle of filming the 7th movie. Life was good. On the 30th of November, he attended a holiday charity toy drive for his Disaster Relief Foundation, Reach Out Worldwide, at a car shop he co-owned with friend and racing partner Roger Rodas in Santa Clarita, California. At around 3:30 p.m., Paul and Roger decided to take a 2005 Porsche Carrera GT for a quick test drive on a popular drifting curve nearby. Paul told a friend that he'd be back in 5 minutes. Roger got behind the wheel. Both men wore their seatbelts and neither had consumed alcohol or drugs. Then, just 100 yards from the shop, Roger, who was driving at 100 miles per hour in a 45 zone, lost control of the vehicle. The Porsche hit a curb, struck a tree and a light post, spun, and slammed into another tree. It caught fire instantly. Attendees of the charity event heard the crash and ran over, but there was nothing anyone could do. The car was completely engulfed by flames. They used up all the fire extinguishers, but it was no use. Paul and Roger were trapped, and witnesses could only watch on in horror. Paul was burned beyond recognition, and his identity had to be formally confirmed through dental records. Paul's death shocked Hollywood and devastated fans worldwide. Tributes flooded in. The crash was particularly disturbing due to the parallels with Paul's on-screen persona, a man who lived fast and loved cars. Production of Furious 7 paused while the filmmakers reworked the movie. Paul's brothers Caleb and Cody joined the production as stand-ins, with CGI used to digitally superimpose Paul's face onto their bodies. His character was retired at the end of the film. Paul Walker wasn't the only one whose car crash echoed the storyline of his most famous work. Jan and Dean were one of the defining acts of surf rock music in the early 60s and helped shape the California sound with dozens of hits about cars, girls, and beach life. In 1964, they released Dead Man's Curve, a hit song that would eventually become ominous. The song was about a late-night street race between a Corvette Stingray and a Jaguar XKE on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles that ends in a crash. The screech of tires and crunch of metal can be heard at the end of the song. Then, just 2 years later, on the 2nd of April 1966, real life once again imitated art. Jan Berry was speeding in his own Corvette Stingray when he slammed into a parked truck on Sunset Boulevard, not far from the Dead Man's Curve he sang about. Jan Berry barely survived. He suffered massive brain trauma, temporarily lost the ability to speak, and was partially paralyzed on his right side. After spending weeks in a coma, he slowly recovered, and remarkably, was back in the music studio the following year. On the other side of the world, another actor met a tragic fate that mirrored the role he had just played. In Somalia, a film meant to warn people about clan violence ended up becoming a real-life tragedy. The short film, Ano Kwabil, which translates to Clan Vengeance, tells the story of two friends caught up in a deadly feud between rival sub-clans. The film was trying to get this message across, that these cycles of revenge killings don't solve anything and just lead to more death. One of the film's supporting actors, Gudi Muhammad Jidi, a father of 11, played a man trying to stop a killing. His character pleaded for peace. Not long after filming wrapped in April 2025, Jidi was shot dead outside his home due to a real-life clan dispute, eerily similar to the one portrayed in the film. There have been no arrests or police investigation. Thank you so much to our paid supporters. Carolyn McBrayer, Mars Mugio, Trevor Eddy, Some Nerd You Don't Know, Matthew the Celt, Francis Boron, Aero Skies, Cindy Chen, and K4 Silver. As always, thank you for watching, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. I'll see you in the next one.